Welcome to this edition of History and Highballs as part of the North Carolina Museum of History's History at Home initiative. We're so glad that you're joining us for this evening's program, Bourbon. My name is Stacy and I handle adult education over at the museum, so whenever you join us for one of these History and Highballs programs, you and I will virtually get to spend the evening together listening to some incredible stories about North Carolina places and people and what makes our state so special. Tonight's program is just one of many exciting digital offerings available through MOH. So if you'd like to learn more, we invite you to head over to our website at www.ncmuseumofhistory.org. We would like to take this opportunity to thank our North Carolina Museum of History Associates and Foundation for making this evening's event possible. Our associates and foundation provide crucial funding and support to the museum, which in addition to many other things, helps make programming like this evening's program happen. If you'd like to learn more about becoming an associates member, please head over to their website at www.ncmoha.com. We would also like to take this opportunity to thank those of you who graciously donated funds towards this evening's program. We do our best to keep our programs free to attend, but there are costs associated with keeping these series going, and we continue to be so appreciative for your generous support of the museum and its programs. If you haven't already used the link in your registration email to check out the tutorial for this evening's specially themed cocktail, the Brown Sugar Old Fashioned, with guest bartender Mike Beavers of Mingle Bars, we invite you to head over to the museum's YouTube channel and check it out. It is fantastic. A few quick housekeeping items for this evening. We ask that you please keep your mics muted throughout the entirety of the program and to please type any questions that you have for our guest speaker into the chat function located at the bottom center of your screen. At the end of the lecture, I will ask the speaker as many of your questions as time allows. So it's my honor to introduce this evening's speaker, Rick Henry, State Manager for North Carolina of the Sazerac Company. The Sazerac Company became a Southern institution in the early 1800s after one of the brand's cognacs landed in New Orleans from France. Henry's presentation will include a history of the Sazerac Company, a background on the Buffalo Trace Distillery, and some other general information. Little known fact, Benjamin Franklin directed the company in production of cannons to help the Patriots during the American Revolution. All right, Rick, I'm going to turn it over to you. Welcome. Thanks so much for being with us.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to tonight. Got a great little evening set up with just a little bit of talk about bourbon, a little bit of talk about whiskey. If everybody can see my presentation, we're going to jump right in. So as mentioned, what we're going to talk about first is a quick overview of Sazerac, who we are, what we are, because believe it or not, we are a little bit more than just bourbon. We are a major supplier in the spirits industry. Then we're going to talk about the Buffalo Trace distillery and some highlights from the distillery. After that, we'll get into a little bit of portfolio / brand highlights. What I mean by that is we'll go over some of the top brands in our portfolio and just let you know what they are and what about them and things you can look out for when you're looking for these brands. And then we're going to wrap it up with a Q&A from you guys. So I open all questions. Please, I'm open to all questions. Please let me know if you have anything on your mind. We'll go ahead and try to get as many of those answered as we can. Jumping in, quick overview of the Sazerac Company. One of the things we're most proud of is we are American owned and we're owned by one shareholder, one family, the Goldring family. Bill Goldring specifically owns the company. Another thing that is very important to us is we've doubled in size every 5 years for the last 35 years, and that continues through today. Currently, we're sitting at about 2,200 or so employees with over 450 brands globally. We are the largest spirits manufacturer in the United States. Some highlights here. 1.5 million barrels of whiskey aging in any one of our 48 warehouses. Again, 48 warehouses aging 1.5 million barrels of whiskey at any given time. Another thing that makes us different than some of the other guys is we are #1 in volume share in the United States. If you look, we're about 19% of the overall share versus our competitive suppliers. Here's a look on your left here, top whiskey suppliers in the United States. You can see where Sazerac lands. Top versus the category, the Sazerac Company and the Buffalo Trace Distillery are leading the charge in the bourbon section. So a little about the Buffalo Trace Distillery. For those of you who don't know, the Buffalo Trace Distillery is the oldest active distillery in the country. What I mean by that when I say the oldest active distillery in the country, we were actually allowed to stay open during Prohibition because we were open for medicinal reasons. That said, that the distillery has not shut down since Prohibition. We are a historic landmark in Frankfort, Kentucky. That's something that you'll see on every one of our bottles that we put out now. It's a little label that we put on most of our cases on the outside of the bottles. The first major distillery started there in 1857. Buffalo Trace itself launched in 1999. We are the most awarded distillery in the world with over 500 gold medals for any of our products that come out of the distillery. Very interestingly enough, when it comes to our whiskeys and our bourbons, we have about 40 to 50 different brand labels that are sold today in the bourbon and whiskey category. That said, they all come from one of 5 mash bills. We have a low rye mash bill, a high rye mash bill, a wheated mash bill, a straight rye mash bill, and a high rye mash bill. Every single Buffalo Trace product is going to come from one of those 5 mash bills. One thing that makes us different than some of the other competitors in our suppliers in our marketplace is we use the same char on every one of our barrels. As you may or may not know, in order to be a bourbon, you have to use a brand new oak barrel charred from the inside. We use a number 4 char, which extracts more flavors and colors. We think the char rating through the society is a 1 through 5. So we're charring that barrel almost as much as we can to get the most out of it. Couple of facts about the Buffalo Trace Distillery itself. It's over 430 acres. There we have currently, we're at about 127 buildings on the property. Those buildings including office buildings, storage buildings, bottling buildings, different things like that. We have a mashing capacity of over 10,000 bushels per day. As I said earlier, we have the capacity of storing 1.5 million barrels at any time. So the good news is, I know some of us are struggling to try to find Buffalo Trace, Eagle Rare, Blanton's. We are building more and more storage for warehouses every single day. In the past 4 years, we've added about 16 aging warehouses. So as you can imagine, we're going to catch up to that juice sooner than later. We're going to see some more of this wonderful bourbon ready for us. We have 4 bottling lines operations. At the distillery alone, the Buffalo Trace Distillery, there are over 450 employees. Buffalo Trace was the first distillery to win Distillery of the Year. It has been awarded Distillery of the Year more times than any other distillery in existence. We were also the first to incorporate the use of steam power, not to mention the first to use temperature-controlled warehouses. You'll see as some of our competitors rely on Mother Nature for the temperature control in the warehouses. We actually take a different route and we use temperature-controlled warehouses. We feel that it helps with the aging of the products. Jumping in and taking a look at some of our top brands, this is just a small sampling of some of the brands that we have in our portfolio. Starting off with a brand that we acquired about 4 years ago. And the reason I started with this one is because most folks don't even realize that we own this brand. This is an iconic brand that's been around for as long as you can remember, Southern Comfort. One thing I did want to point out is the Southern Comfort bottle on the right there, the 80 proof, is the introduction that we have launched since we've acquired this brand from the Brown-Forman Company about 4 or 5 years ago. Southern Comfort has always been that 70 proof original cordial type spirit. The Southern Comfort 80 proof is a 80 proof whiskey based spirit. So we're very proud that we're taking this brand back to its original roots. We've taken it from a cordial back to a whiskey. If you get an opportunity, it is a phenomenal buy. Buffalo Trace, the namesake for the distillery. This is a small batch that's 8 years old, 90 proof. It's won double gold more times than I can tell you. The average retail price on it is about $28 a bottle. And here in North Carolina, we're at $27.95, right in line with the average retail price. $17.92 is another fantastic product from one of our other distilleries. This one's not out of Frankfort, Kentucky, but this one's out of our Glenmore distillery. This one's a 93.7 proof. It's a higher rye recipe. This one has won multiple gold awards at the Whiskey World Awards. Our latest award was the 2020 Whiskey Spirits Award. Weller Reserve is a little known secret in our portfolio. I'm sure everybody here has heard of Weller. North Carolina specifically, we sell the Weller 107 proof, and we do get the Weller 12-year 2 times per year. This is very unique in that it is one of our only other wheated bourbon recipes out of the distillery besides Pappy Van Winkle. This one is aged in the middle and the top floors. Average retail price for the products that we see in North Carolina is right around $30 a bottle. Eagle Rare is the hidden gem in the portfolio, if you ask me. This one is the best value for the dollar. It is a 10-year product. It's won double gold 5 times. It's a 10-year product, 90 proof, that is going to compete with $50 and $60 bottles of bourbon all day long. This one, as I say, if you're lucky enough to find this in a liquor store, it is the absolute best value in our portfolio. E.H. Taylor, I saw in the chat before we started, somebody had a bottle of the E.H. Taylor small batch in front of them. Good for you, because I have trouble finding this one myself. This is aged in our famous Warehouse C, which was built by Colonel E.H. Taylor, who happened to be one of the distillers at our distillery before he passed away. This one is a 91.6 rating on the international whiskey competitions this year. Very high rating for us. We're extremely proud of that. The small batch happens to be about a 100 proof product, and it retails right around 40 bucks a bottle. I threw these in here because this is a little unique for us. This product's been around for us for about 3 years. The Corazon tequilas we've been selling for quite a while, but these are a unique line extension to the Corazon tequilas, and I threw these in here just because they are a little whiskey related. As you can see, we have 3 expressions here that are aged in whiskey barrels from the Buffalo Trace distillery. We have one aged in Buffalo Trace, we have one aged in Sazerac Rye, and one aged in Thomas Handy. These products all retail for $79.99 to $95 to $99.95 per bottle. These are actually probably sitting on some of the ABC stores in North Carolina as we speak. A couple of bottles here and there floating throughout the state. If you haven't had the opportunity to try one, if you are a tequila drinker and a bourbon drinker at the same time, this is a great mix of the two. It's the tequila aged in some of these different types of Sazerac whiskey barrels. Phenomenal, phenomenal product. Speaking of the Corazon, these are the baseline tequila that is our mainstay tequila in the portfolio. I put this in here since we were talking about the tequilas aged in the bourbon barrels, but if we do have those tequila drinkers, these are the Sazerac tequilas that you can find. Wheatley Vodka is one of our latest additions to the Sazerac portfolio. Harlan Wheatley is the current master distiller at Sazerac. This Wheatley Vodka is his handheld project. He created this about 4 or 5 years ago, and this one he's very proud of. It's a craft distilled 10 times vodka, hand created by Harlan Wheatley himself. It's an 82 proof, a little bit higher on the proof than some of our competitors. Average price about $20 nationally. It goes for $21.95 a bottle here in North Carolina. This is one that you're going to start to see more and more of, as this is a brand new product for us and starting to get some legs out there. We are very proud to say that we are the official vodka on United Airlines as of about July of last year. So if anybody's flying on United and you're in the mood for a vodka, you're going to see Wheatley Vodka. And if you're in the mood for a bourbon, you're actually going to see Buffalo Trace on that same airline. Freeze Vodka is another great vodka that we have in our portfolio. This was another acquisition that we picked up about 5-6 years ago. I put this one in here just because this is such a great product, and we do a heck of a business here in North Carolina with it. I thought it was good to point it out that it is a Sazerac owned product. Now, a lot of people are going to be wondering, why is he talking about Fireball when this is a bourbon event? Because I know the purist out there will say Fireball is not a bourbon whiskey. That's true. Fireball is actually a Canadian whiskey, and it's a flavored Canadian whiskey at that. But the reason I put this up here is because I want everybody to realize what has helped us to build all these additional storage warehouses. To us, the bourbon purist, and I like to consider myself one of those as well, so don't take that as an insult. I definitely consider myself a purist because my first choice is not going to be a cinnamon flavored Canadian whiskey. But I enjoy the fact that this has done a heck of a lot for our company, and this allows us to have them to get the income to build these additional warehouses to age more Buffalo Trace and Eagle Rare and Blanton's. So I put this out here just so that everybody realizes, why is Sazerac messing around in this category? It's because this is the #1 most recognized brand by 21 to 29-year-old consumers. It is a heck of a moneymaker for us here at Sazerac, and it allows us to do the things that we do with the rest of our brands. That said, we do have a couple of more a couple of more flavored whiskeys that we just launched within the past 6 or so months here in North Carolina. One of them is the Rams Point Peanut Butter Whiskey. If you haven't had the opportunity to try a couple of these flavors, they're fun. They work. It's not something that you and I are going to drink every single night, but it works for a party. They have their niche and they do what they do. Sheepdog is another peanut butter whiskey that we also just launched. So that said, I always like to leave some of our highlights. That's just a few products that we actually sell. We have over 450 brands that we sell out of the distillery. We specialize in bourbon, but we do cover every single category in the spirits category. This is a quote from Jim Murray, the whiskey Bible, the creator of the Whiskey Bible. Without any doubt, the bourbon represents some of the world's finest whiskey. I take that to heart because it is extremely true. And we're very proud to have some of these products under our portfolio. I will open it up to some questions now, if anybody has any questions.
We definitely have quite a few questions for you, Rick. Hold on, let me scroll up really quickly here. So I think the first one is, what is the process for buying a bottle of Weller at North Carolina ABC stores? They never seem to have it in stock, and they can't seem to get an answer on consistent answer on lottery / reserving a bottle.
So the Weller Antique is the red label. It's a 107 proof. That's the one that we have available month in and month out. And I say it's available month in and month out with a little asterisk beside it. We get about 50 cases per month for the entire state. Just to put it in perspective, there are 167 ABC boards with over 400 ABC stores in North Carolina, and we get 50 cases per month of Weller. So it is extremely tough to come by. If you're lucky enough, you just have to be in the store at the right time. I'll give you guys a little piece of advice on a little good time to start looking for the products, any of the products that I'm talking about. We send all of our allocated whiskeys to the state by about the 5th to the 7th of each month, depending on the way the calendar works. It gets registered at the state warehouse, ABC warehouse, and then it makes its way out to the local boards. The best time to start finding this in your local ABC stores across the state is probably between the 12th and the 17th of the month, depending on how far away you are from Raleigh. If you're in the Raleigh area, it's about the 12th to the 13th. If you're further out in the Charlotte area, you're getting closer to the 16th or 17th of every month is when these things are going to be available in the liquor stores. Unfortunately, they're probably not going to make it to the shelf just because the stores are going to get so few bottles. These retail outlets are not lying to you when they say they really don't have it. It's because they're trying to spread 50 bottles across all 400 stores in the state. 50 cases,
Wow.
I'm sorry.
Any idea how Lisa can get a bottle of George T. Stagg?
So George T. Stagg is a product that is only released once per year. That's this time every year. We actually are expecting our shipment to be in the warehouse, in the state boards, probably any day now. To put it in perspective, that one we only get one time per year, and we get about 100 cases of it. So that's going to be even more difficult. That's one of the ones that's part of the Buffalo Trace Antique Collection, and that's going to fall under what most boards do with their lotteries. You're going to have to win a board lottery in order to find a bottle of that.
Is Buffalo Trace lobbying to be able to sell online direct to consumers?
We are not. That is actually against federal spirits laws. And we know we have some competitors out there that are doing it. We know we have some liquor stores that are out there doing it, but we do not condone it at all. And the reason we don't is because it's not protected once it's sold to you from some of these online sources. Who knows if they're selling you a fake or the real product? At this time, it is not something that we see ourselves getting involved in. Now, we do it overseas in some countries where it's legal, but there we know it's governed and we're doing it on our own. We're doing it through our own sources. It's not somebody selling it on eBay or somebody that opened up an Amazon store, so to speak.
Summerlin asks, When can we expect Eagle Rare back in stores? It's been 10 months.
So Eagle Rare, this one's close to my heart because Eagle Rare is one of my favorite products in our portfolio. Eagle Rare, we actually send about 1,400 cases every single month to North Carolina. To put it in
Wow.
perspective, that number last year at this time was about 700 to 800 cases. So we are getting more and more Eagle Rare to the state. The problem with it is we are gaining more and more Eagle Rare fans. So it's
Right.
becoming that much more difficult to find. So it's a good problem, bad problem. But again, this is one that I would recommend if you're, like I said, anywhere between the 12th and the 17th is when any of these products will be hitting the actual ABC stores.
Okay. So John and Jean say we took a tour, Buffalo Trace tour a couple of years ago. We didn't see the still. Are you using a column still at BT? Does it still operate 24 hours a day?
So we have 6. They are, I'm going to go into my think tank here. They are 53 feet tall silo stills. And these things operate not 24 hours a day, but darn close to it.
And then follow up, is all of the Buffalo Trace, Eagle Rare, and Blanton's made solely at the Buffalo Trace location in Frankfort?
100% of it.
Okay, hold on. There's so many questions for you. Okay, Lance asks, is it true that North Carolina gets a very small allocation of your bourbons compared to other states? And if so, why and when will that change?
That is actually false. And I'll put it in perspective. Most people think that South Carolina gets a lot more than we get here in North Carolina. The biggest difference is that South Carolina is an open market, meaning they're not run by the government, whereas we're a control market, meaning we are run by the government. What that means for us is in South Carolina, our distributor partners can decide where they want to send this stuff. In North Carolina, the ABC Commission is the one making that decision where they want to send. Since the ABC Commission is running the ABC stores and boards, the ABC Commission has to be fair with who they send it to. So what I mean by that is I mentioned we have about 400 and I think it's the number is 406 or 407 stores in North Carolina. If every one of those stores wanted a case of this, they could raise their hand and they will get a case at some point or another, just to be fair, because we're a control state. So they're going to do everything in the fairest way possible. In South Carolina, we get the same amount of juice that we get to North Carolina per brand, but they're only sending it to about 10% of their stores. So you're only going to find it in South Carolina in your top stores, in your large stores, in your big stores. You're not going to find it at Joe's Liquors over on the corner. You're going to find it in the big guys, the Magruders, the Total Wines, the guys like that. So it feels like South Carolina has a lot more product. It's only because they're squeezing the same amount of product into a much smaller rank of stores. And we're taking that same amount of product and spreading it out between ABC stores across the entire state.
Patrick asks, what mash bill is used for 1792?
1792 is going to be our number 1 or number 2. I'm sorry, our number 2 is our high rye mash bill. My assumption is that is our number 2.
Okay, John Gomes asks, what's your favorite Buffalo Trace product readily available in North Carolina? Conversely, favorite unicorn Buffalo Trace AC bottle?
So I, just like the rest of everybody on this meeting here, I get my products the same way you guys get your products, is because this is a government run market. I don't get to go into the warehouse and pull some aside and keep them for me. I actually have to go to the ABC store and buy these things too. The one that I'm drinking the most of right now, and the one that you're going to have no issue finding, there's 2 of them. 1792 happens to be one of them. The other one is a newer one that we've more recently launched here in North Carolina. It's called Bowman Brothers Small Batch. That's from one of our micro distilleries. We own a couple of distilleries throughout the country that we call micro distilleries. These are like for our pet projects, but we have a Bowman Brothers Small Batch that comes out of there, and it retails for about $33, $34 a bottle. It is phenomenal, and you have no issue finding it every day. That said, if I ever get lucky and see Eagle Rare sitting there or Weller sitting there, I'm going to buy those all day long.
So Dale says, I've heard many stories on the origin of the Sazerac cocktail. Can you validate the truth?
So the Sazerac cocktail was the first ever invented cocktail at the Sazerac Coffee House. If anybody's ever heard the story of the Sazerac Coffee House, it was in essence the first ever bar. If you're ever in New Orleans, once we get through this pandemic, We actually just about a year and a half ago bought a piece of property there right down off of Canal Street. Sits adjacent to the Sheraton Hotel on Canal Street, and it was the site of the original Sazerac Coffee House that started the first ever Sazerac cocktail. We've taken this and turned it into a tourist attraction where you can go through and see how the distilleries work and this and that. It's not an actual bar. You can get cocktails and samples while you're in there. It's much like touring the Buffalo Trace distillery, and it goes through a history of the cocktail and a history of the brand, history of the coffee house / bar itself. But that is a very true story that the gentleman or lady there that had that question.
So we've got a couple about Blanton's. One question is, why are some Blanton's products only sold outside of the United States?
So good question. That's actually a fantastic question. Number one, we have different parameters that we follow in the United States versus other countries as far as bottle sizes. So a lot of products that you'll see that are more worldwide products or products that are sold outside of this country for us, Blanton's was the first one that we ever started doing that with. Most of the bottles over there are 700 milliliter bottles versus what we see here at 750 milliliter bottles. By chance, they just started back in the day being that we would put this product in the 700 milliliter bottle. And that was the differentiation between the two. As we got going, we had Blanton's was a brand that wasn't quite as big as it is nowadays in its early infancy, and it was actually doing much larger overseas. So we did take some of the juice and started expanding and doing more line extensions with the product then. That said, we're at the point where you're starting to see more line extensions and more product offerings in Blanton's in the United States. We just got our first ever shipment of Blanton's straight from the barrel in North Carolina earlier this month. Unfortunately, it was only 25 cases of the product, but it is a step in the right direction.
Brandon asks, how do bourbon membership companies like Flaviar or Caskers get your bottles so easily? And are they trustworthy?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
How do bourbon membership companies like Caskers or Flaviar get your bottles so easily? And do you think they're trustworthy?
I actually am not familiar with them.
Matthew Gunnell's asked, can he have a job?
I will say this is the fun part of the job is when, now historically we'll do these events live. So obviously we're doing this thing over the internet here, but this is the fun part of the job. There is a 9 to 5 aspect that isn't quite as fun. We don't do the 9 to 5 with a drink in our hands and those kind of things.
Can you discuss Ancient Age and how it compares to Buffalo Trace or Eagle Rare?
So Ancient Age is a wonderful product. It's been around for quite a while for us. Ancient Age is something that we consider more of one of our entry-level products. And when I use entry-level, just simply based upon the price point, that one would compare more to a product like Benchmark, which is one of our brands that you would see. Now, that said, we do have a couple of higher marks of Ancient Age that would be pretty darn comparable to both Eagle Rare and Buffalo Trace, as they're some of the Ancient Ages uses the same mash bill. It just depends on which Ancient Age product you're talking about. The Ancient Age, most of the Ancient Age uses a mash bill number 2, which is our high rye. So it's the same one you're going to find with a Blanton's and Elmer T. Lee, products like that. A couple of them use our number 1, which is a low rye, which is what you'll find with the Buffalo Trace and the Eagle Rare.
Tom asks, how does North Carolina compare in terms of direct sales and government controls to other surrounding states?
So off of a percentage basis, North Carolina is a very well represented bourbon state for our company. That said, that is why we are actually getting more and more of the allocations that come out every year. To put that in perspective, I can already tell you moving forward, we just got our allocations last week for January through June for every single brown spirit in our portfolio, basically. And our Buffalo Trace moving forward, January through June, month by month, is going to be about 19% more than we had this time last year. The reason we're able to get 19% more is because we do sell out of every single drop of juice that comes into this state every single month. There is not a single drop of any of our premium whiskeys that carries over from the December allocation into January or January into February. We are definitely competing with some of the larger states out there.
Can you walk us through the ABC lottery?
So the ABC lotteries are all actually, it's not an ABC lottery. It would be that dependent upon that ABC board, and those boards are usually county boards. So the one that you see in Wake County may be different than the one that you see in Mecklenburg or in New Hanover or in Asheville. They're all independently run, as those ABC stores are independently run. In most cases, you simply drop your name into a drawing, you get put on a list. It used to be that some of them carried over year. My understanding is that most of these larger boards wipe it clean and start fresh every year, which is making it a little bit easier for the everyday consumer. When I first started with Buffalo Trace here in North Carolina, I've been with the company just about 11 years now, just moved to North Carolina about 4 years ago. And when I came to North Carolina 4 years ago, there were some of these bourbon lottery lists that were basically about 4 or 5 years long until you won your way into a waiting list for 4 or 5 years to be able to get the product. Now my understanding is they're wiped clean every year and that no list carries over into the next year. So you put your name into a drawing this year. If you don't win, you start fresh next year, which is makes it a little bit easier for everybody.
Jeff asks, when will North Carolina see the new benchmark variants being implemented?
I'm sorry, when would we see what?
The new benchmark variants.
That, you know what, fantastic question, because I actually raised my hand early on in this project, and we initially were going to launch that project on a much larger scope and send it out to more states. After the brand team thought about it a little bit more, they thought the better way to do it would be launch it in 5 or 6 markets first. North Carolina is 100% on that interest list. We're only a handful of months into the first round of the first tier markets. I'm assuming that we're going to be on our second or third tier launches in the country. That information is actually not privy to me just yet. I just know that I've expressed interest, and I think with what we do with the mother brand benchmark, that we should be in line to see some of the benchmark extensions sooner than some other markets.
Eva asks, any idea what the impact from local distillery is on sales volume?
Local, you mean local? I'm assuming referring to local distilleries in North Carolina. For us, as I mentioned before, we sell out of every single bottle that we send into the state. So we've had zero impact from locals. We actually, I welcome local distilleries to come in, because as a supplier that, number one, is a bourbon fan that loves the category, I want to see the category grow. And as a supplier, the best thing for any of us that are making the bourbon whiskeys is that we can see the category grow. Vodka is still the number one category in spirits by far. Bourbon is the number one growing category, but nowhere near the volume of vodka. So I welcome all the local distilleries to come up and send new great products into the category. One day I would love to see the bourbon category to be as many cases as the vodka category.
Any cool stories or favorite stories from Sazerac's history?
Quite a few. I don't know how many I can tell. No, there are, the one thing that makes our distillery unique, and this is something that I tell everybody when I'm doing these presentations live, and we're doing live samplings of different products. If you even look at I don't know, is everybody still able to see my screen with just a little snippet
Yeah.
I have of bottles up here? Perfect. Yeah. So even if you look here, you see brands like E.H. Taylor, you see brands like Blanton's. I wish I had an Elmer T. Lee on there. I don't. But the one cool thing about the distillery here is that every one of these products that are doing so well, these guys were actually master distillers with the company. So these are true stories. These aren't made up marketing stories. Colonel Blanton was an actual man that was the master distiller at Buffalo Trace. Blanton's is his product. I'm sorry, I said Colonel Blanton. Colonel Taylor was an actual master distiller at the distillery. That's his product. Mr. Blanton was an actual master distiller at the distiller. That's actually one of his products. Elmer T. Lee was the master distiller at the product. Elmer T. Lee is actually the one that invented or came up with the Blanton's recipe, which was the first ever single barrel bourbon. So what I like about the distillery, and the story that I think means the most to us, is that every one of these brands have a true story. The Buffalo Trace, that one is named after it's a namesake of the distillery. It's named after the buffalo rolling over the hills of the distillery 200 years ago. 1792 is because 1792 was the first year that Kentucky became a state. The ones that make more sense, that mean more to me, are the ones with the guys' names on them that are true guys. I mentioned Wheatley Vodka earlier. Harlan Wheatley is our master distiller now. So these are real brands, real stories, real creations by real people. They weren't a marketing ploy to come up and try to do something crazy and make a couple extra bucks.
All right, I think we've got our last
one sitting right in front of me, George T. Stagg, another one of our great master distillers. Sorry.
Which is, I think, the one that somebody was trying to get a hold of earlier in the chat. How can the state get more single barrel selects to North Carolina?
So we actually increase our single barrel select allocation year on year. We're actually about to receive the first of the single barrel select, hopefully any day now. I'm assuming it's going to be in the next 2 weeks. That's 15 barrels of the 1792 single barrel select. Shortly after that should be 15 barrels of Buffalo Trace. And then this year we also had 3 barrels of Eagle Rare and only 1 barrel of Blanton's. I'm expecting these to all hit within 3 to 6 weeks from now, with the exception of 1792, which should be any day now. The way it works within the company is we will see an increase year on year on that single barrel. The problem is this is a product that we're increasing nationwide by market, and it's coming out of the same juice that we're already selling. So when we take product to make it single barrel, I take some Buffalo Trace juice to make it single barrel. It's only going to come out of the juice that I'm selling on a monthly basis anyway. So we kind of have to control how much we do send in as the single barrel, because at the end of the day, I'm still going to get the same amount of product coming into the state of North Carolina year on year.
Any idea, Joe asked, any idea if Early Times brand will change at all since Sazerac has acquired them?
So we haven't been told anything directly, but what I can tell you is we have a history of taking brands and revamping them and doing what we think should be done with them. Sometimes that can be as simple as a bottle change. Sometimes that can be a slight variant on the recipe. My assumption is we will change it and we will do something with it. I know for a fact one thing we will do with it is give it some of the attention that it deserved that really didn't get, because it was owned by a company that had all of their emphasis on another brand. But I'm assuming that we will make a couple of changes here or there, whether it's just cosmetically or recipe wise.
Julia asks, what are the vodka grains?
It depends on the vodka we're talking about. Wheatley is a wheated recipe. So that's the one that we're putting all of our eggs in that basket now, and that is our wheated recipe.
Does Sunlight, light in general, harm bourbon in bottles?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Does light and or sunlight harm bourbon in bottles?
It can, if it's hitting it for an extended period of time. If it's at your home bar, that light is not going to affect it. If you've got the stuff sitting next to a window, it could be affected. And honestly, what it's going to affect more is the corks on some of the products, because unlike a wine, we usually store bourbon standing straight up, whereas wine you store sitting down, so the cork stays moist. Those things, that and along with temperature, will mainly affect the products if they're in direct sunlight or direct light.
Matthew asks, what can we buy now easily that will be collector's items in 2040?
That's a fantastic question. Easily is the trick question there, because
Right.
I don't know that there's any bourbon outside of some of the 1792 and the Bowman Brothers that I spoke about that we can find easily. But what I will say is 1792 has some fantastic line extensions. The one that actually just hit the marketplace is a 1792 wheated recipe. It is a phenomenal product because you have a high rye product with a wheated recipe. It's with a wheated extension on it as well. It is phenomenal. Brands like that, these one-off line extensions that come out once a year, take the other ones like the E.H. Taylor barrel aged. Hang on to one of those. They'll be the collector's items years down the line.
Do you know, Edgar asks, do you know how many different expressions of EHT have been made?
I'm going to guess, without even counting them on my fingers, I'm going to guess we're at about 7. Now let me do the math. It would be in that 7 or 8 range.
Pam asks, where can we find the barrel aged tequilas that you mentioned?
So they'll be floating around most of our larger ABC stores. If you go to any of the newer stores that you see in your states, in your counties, you're going to find those in the Wake County stores. You're going to find those in the Mecklenburg County stores, the New Hanover stores. They'll last for a little while. And the good news with those is we can get more of those.
Brad asks, how will we know about when/where to get the 1792 single barrel that is getting ready to hit the shelves?
So that's something the state doesn't share with us, what they do with any of the products, even the Buffalo Trace, the Eagle Rare, any of the line extensions. Rightfully so, because they know that I do a lot of events like this, and I would be telling everybody where to go tomorrow. So they they keep that from me. Unfortunately, I can't find out where the different products have went until a month later when the numbers are published in the NAPCA reporting data. So unfortunately, I have no line of sight as to where certain allocations are going to land.
Jace says, what governs how much allocated product is sold to each state? How do we increase North Carolina since per capita population we get less? Do we need to buy more Fireball?
Now, Fireball won't have anything to do with it. Actually, the way that the allocations have started years ago by market is they were an extension of your sales before that brand went on allocation. So to better define that, before Buffalo Trace went on allocation, if we sold 1,000 cases a year here, and then it goes on allocation, next year we may get 1,100 cases. If you're a market that sold 10,000 cases, you're going to get 11,000 cases. So the allocation is simply based on the usage of that state or the sales in that state before the product went on allocation. I can remember as early as 6 years ago when we were having trouble selling some of these products in some stores. Actually, at one point in time, we sold Weller Special Reserve here in North Carolina, and the state discontinued it because it wasn't moving. Now we're kicking ourselves in the butt a few years later saying we would love to still be getting an allocation of that, but that allocation's already made its way into another market.
Pat asks, have you ever met Freddie Johnson?
He's a phenomenal guy. If you're taking the tours at Buffalo Trace, and we are still running tours now, they're at a limited capacity and some things have changed. But if you ever do take a tour, I recommend asking for him. He's the best tour guide that we have in the facility. On top of being a great guy, he's just such a fun character to hang around with. We actually just launched out of the distillery gift shop, Freddie's Root Beer that we're now selling. I guess it's been about a year or two now that we're selling the products named after him, specifically for him.
Will baby Saz become more available in North Carolina? I never see it on the shelves anymore.
So it's still a small base. We get about 60 cases a month right now. To put that in perspective, this time 1 year ago, we were only getting 20 cases a month. The good news is that's a 6-year-old product. So 6 years in the realm of most of our spirit and most of our bourbons, 6 years is one of the lower age statements. So that one's one that we're going to see sooner than we see a product like Buffalo Trace or Eagle Rare. We'll see the 6-year-old product allocation increasing a lot quicker than we'll see the 10-year-old Eagle Rare increasing. So my guess is in this time next year, that number is going to almost double. And in a year from that, that number should double as well.
Mac Ford asks, what can you tell us about the production of Pappy?
Not a whole heck of a lot. So that's a well-kept secret. And I'm not sure exactly what the question refers to by production, but what I will say is there are 5 different marks that are the mainstays. So we have the 10-year, the 12-year, the 13-year rye. I'm sorry, 6 marks. The 15, 20, and 23-year Pappies. As you can imagine, highly coveted, extremely rare, extremely hard to come by. Again, that's a product that's released once a year for us. We did just get our most recent allocations. The good news is overall, we increased our allocation to North Carolina by about, I want to say off the top of my head, I want to say it was about 40 bottles, or I'm sorry, 40 cases. That being said, some of the higher marks, the yield wasn't as high as we expected. So we're going to get way less on the 23 and the 20, and we're going to see more of the 12 and the 15 because the lion's share evaporated at a much faster rate than we expected this year, or these past 23 years, I should say.
Edgar asks, do you think we'll ever see 1.75 liter bottles of Buffalo Trace in North Carolina like are sold in Florida?
So we could, but it would still come out of the same amount of juice that I get in the state. I could technically take all of the juice I get and decide how much of it I wanted in 750s and even the little airplane bottles and in 175s, but it wouldn't give me any more juice. It would be the same amount at the end of the day as far as liquid goes. So based on that, it's going to be a little while until we catch up with allocations and catch up with demand that I'll start launching size extensions until I can get more. I don't want to pull from the 750 liquid that I have now just to give us 175s.
Jeff asks, can the allocation for our state amounts ever be reset? Like it would be nice to see Weller Special Reserve here.
I completely agree, and I wish it were that easy. The problem is at this point with a brand like Weller Reserve, in order for it to be reset, I've got to take it from another market. And if that's going to be reset, that's like saying somebody could take Buffalo Trace from us. So it's a tricky situation because resetting could end up hurting us on other brands that we're currently getting that some other markets aren't.
Is there a calendar of which months you send out the products that you have once a year, twice a year distributions, like something that the public can have access to?
So the highly allocated products, the antique collection, which would be the Eagle Rare 17, the George T. Stagg, Thomas Handy, Sazerac 18, and the William LaRue Weller, they come out every November. And the Pappy Van Winkles, I'm sorry, they come out every October. And the Pappy Van Winkles come out every November. Some of the other one-offs, they vary throughout the year. Some of the E.H. Taylor marks, historically, we'd like to hit those in February, April, and September, but that varies. They're just tentative bottling dates. But the ones that you're going to see on a strict every single year would be the Buffalo Trace Antique Collection in October, Pappy Van Winkle in November.
All right, I think this is our last question. Is there really a difference regarding the flavor of a neck pour versus an open bottle?
You know, I don't know the answer to that. And I've never even heard the argument, to be quite honest with you.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Rick. This has been really, really interesting. I've learned a lot. I hope that everybody else has as well. And what a fun way to kick off the holiday season. Hopefully we can find some of these in the store pretty soon.
Keep your eyes open. We are getting more than we've ever had before. So I say don't give up, that we are getting more juice than we've ever had before. As I mentioned, the problem is it's so good that we have more people buying it too.
Right. It's a good problem to have, but also a tough problem to have.
That's right. Thank you, guys. I appreciate everybody coming and spending some time with me. I look forward to a time when we can start to do things like this live and in person again, because that's when it gets really fun. When we can line up 4 or 5 of these and speak in a big group and sip them together and taste them together and openly talk about them. So just keep your ears peeled, because once we get back to a little bit of normal, we'll start doing those types of events locally again.
That sounds great. Thank you to all of you who joined us this evening. We hope that you'll join us for our next History and Highballs, which will actually be History and Mocktails, Decorating Biltmore, with Biltmore's floral manager, Lizzie Borchers, happening on Wednesday, December 17th at 7 p.m. Take care, everyone. We hope to see y'all soon.